So just a couple of days later, and the Cautious Hero wraps up with episode 12. And I have to say, this was a very fitting finale for this wonderful anime. There really was only 3 options that this anime could go down. It was either Hsieh was going to fail and have to restart, he was going to succeed and, would carry on to his next mission, or nothing would really happen, he'd get out of there unscathed, and then they'd leave it a little open-ended to say, oh, maybe one day he'll be able to defeat the S-World eventually. And pretty much what happened was they kind of went with option B there. He did succeed, but he also died, but then he got resummoned. And the issue with knowing something is based on an ongoing source material. It removes the element of surprise of like, hey, when you see your character die, and you know the source material is ongoing, you know he's coming back in some capacity. But I thought the way this anime directed it was, like, they incorporated some surprisingly familiar comedy elements both within the battle and then obviously outside of the battle. And it just made it feel like Cautious Hero as we recognize it, while also showing us that, should it get a season 2, should we see what this double S world will look like, obviously there's definitely going to be some more serious, they could actually make it a majority of serious, and then only a little bit of comedy, but still, the idea of making it feel both familiar but also a completely different ballgame that we've never seen before, I think was the perfect way to wrap up this anime, because for a majority of this anime, it was goddamn hilarious. It's some of the hardest I've ever laughed in the anime medium. And the idea of, like, making it have, like, a serious goodbye, a serious, like, conclusion, and then saying, hey, he's gonna come back, he's obviously gonna restart, it's gonna be a very difficult thing, and he's probably gonna struggle in this new world. And I think based on the end of the episode, he's going to be even more cautious than he was before. There's obvious room to make it silly, and there's obviously room to make it absolutely gut-punching and emotional, depending on how they take Rista and Seiya's relationship, as, in his final moments, he recognized, like, oh shit, you were the one that I failed to protect in the original world, he did all that time, so there's obviously a way for them to remember one another, given enough time. So there's tons of ways for them to explore it in a second season. Whether we get it or not remains to be seen, but whether they give us that season 2 or not, I'm pretty good with what we just had. Like, this feels like a completely satisfying conclusion. Like, obviously it's open-ended. They haven't concluded with everything, but still, like, they defeated the S-World. We feel like we wrapped up that story. We know that there's going to be some cautious humor. We know there's going to be some cautious, serious moments. So if we get season 2, I'm going to come up here and review it because I love this anime, but at the same time, should they have to leave it here or just choose to leave it here, I'm completely satisfied 100%. Not many anime can do that, especially based on an ongoing source material, because usually, we would get up to the Demon King there, and then it would just end and be like, hey, go read the light novel, fool. It's like, well, I could read the light novel, or you could just not blue balls me. So to actually have it feel like, okay, we finished one world, we're obviously going to another world, will we get it? Who knows? But you know what? Whatever they decide to do is going to be perfectly fine, and I'm ready perfectly, 100%. It just felt like a great conclusion overall, and I just love how, like, the familiarity to this episode was something I really appreciate. Like, having Seiya, like, smack down her goddess, just say she's useless, some of the more, like, normal things that we've come to expect with his character, in a situation that you knew he's probably gonna die based on everything that's happening here. I mean, you don't get out of one of the Gate of Valhalla and, it's just everything's gonna be a-okay. Based on how he failed the last world, we knew he was coming back at some point. So it was nice to have for, like, that brief moment, the familiarity to its comedy, and then obviously all the emotional pulls and punches. It was actually a surprisingly emotional goodbye. Like, even though I knew it's not going to end here, either Seiya as he is going to be fine, or I wasn't even thinking about it, he would just get resummoned somehow. Like, the idea of, like, a goddess, like, abusing her powers, breaking the rules, she's already kind of on real thin ice here. She's literally releasing all her powers to save the hero that she loves. Like, obviously, you're not gonna send her to hell for that. There's no way that the people that have come to like her as a character, as a person, would say, you know what, you saved the S-World, you lost the person you love, you're going to hell now. No, like, she's obviously not going to get completely punished, so yeah, she'll be punished by going to a different world, but she'll also be rewarded by being able to resummon once again the person that she loves. It's just now he's gonna have to restart all from scratch. No longer with those, like, triple A stats all across the board. He's gonna have to be incredibly cautious. And I think it'd be hilarious to actually see, like, season 2 episode 1. He has that cautious persona, but now that slime that he, like, obliterated to Hell's Gate there actually does take him a ridiculous amount of preparing to do or something like that. There definitely would be room to have comedy, but of course, I mean, based on the glimpses of series we got in the final 2 episodes, should they actually pursue a completely serious arc, it would actually be really interesting to see how they spice up the formula. Overall, I just kind of feel like the Cautious Hero, it did something that was unique and refreshing. The idea of taking the isekai formula that we've all come to know and roll our eyes at in Harmony here, the idea of breaking it down with comedy to then, by the end of its anime, or its first season, depending on if we get more, the idea of incorporating a series to say, hey, he was that generic character, but this is why he failed, this is why he's cautious, and should we pursue it more, there's obviously ways to continue to break down the isekai formula and do our own thing. And that's why this season in general works so well. It was ridiculous. It was Konosuba funny for me. It was just everything that I think an anime like this should be while doing its own unique original ideas. Like I said with episode 11's review, comedy and tragedy are really just two sides of the same coin. You can look at something like Konosuba, look at Cosmo's life in that anime. From our perspective, it's hilarious. From his perspective, it's absolute hell. So yes, you can view this anime being like, oh man, this is all actually him just, he failed once, he knows he has to be cautious, it's so sad, but really, we're still going to laugh, or at least I know I will, at him trying to attack a slime, or calling his friends pack mules, right? But of course, once you get to that one moment where it's actually trying to be serious, of course it's going to tug on your heartstrings. You can look at things like Kaguya-sama Loves War. It has its serious moments that explains why these characters are so ridiculous with their love feud, but still, it's a comedy anime. So that's how I'm going to continue to look at the Cautious Hero, and that's why probably in January, you're going to have a Cautious Hero is Hilarious video. If you see my Konosuba is Hilarious video, it's going to be in the same style as that, breaking down why I think it's funny. I'm sure I'm going to get 100 comments saying how it's not funny, it's actually serious or something like that, but no, it definitely is a hilarious anime to me, 100%, while doing some unique, serious twist by its conclusion here, which is why I think it's going to be a very memorable experience that I'm actually going to rewatch a fair amount, because it actually did something unique in the world of isekai, and you can't say that too often. Like, really, you rarely can say that. It's usually the same gimmicks over and over again, so it was nice to walk in and edit an episode for 12 weeks there, a little longer because it had delays. But still, it just feels like it did something original, and you can't say that too often for a genre that's been milked so much that the dairy cow needs to be put out of its misery. It's actually kind of ridiculous to see the amount of, familiar gags they snuck into this episode. Probably, the best part of this episode to me. It's such a small detail in comparison to everything that happened, both with the more silly, but obviously a majority of the episode was built on more serious elements. The idea of just having, all of the different gods and goddesses that we've come to know and love or fear in this season kind of pop up on Risa's walk of shame, basically. Her feeling like she's going to be punished. She's going to be basically crucified for breaking the rules. And then you got our swordsman there just kind of popping up with a cake, and the whole idea of her saying it has, protein in it, and then eventually that sword just goes through the cake. There was something so brilliant about concluding the anime in that way. Basically, in the middle of the fight, they try to give you that little, okay, it's not all terrible, there's a little bit of comedy here, but of course you knew it wasn't gonna last. And with here, wrapping it up with all the familiar characters, not totally being scumbags, not totally being righteous, but just kind of walking that line of being a little absurd. It was pretty awesome to see all that, and to just see how they were clearly saying, it's not all over here. We're clearly going to let Seiya come back in some capacity. You don't reintroduce comedy at the end of an anime when you basically said the hero is dead, right? So it was just nice to see how they were able to kind of walk that line of being serious and comedy, and it would be interesting to see if they did give us a second season for this anime, how they would do that in the future, because I would definitely feel like they would want to go more serious the deeper we got into that season. I imagine it would be a little ridiculous at the start, but then they would transition into something more serious as to not kind of reuse the same gimmicks they've already done, because the clever thing that they did was hey, we're going to a different world in the next arc here, so they're not just going to rehash the same world, the same characters over and over again. So there's so many ways to evolve the formula, which you can't really say all too often, because usually in a series like this where it gets successful, it just runs the same thing over and over again until people get burnt out and they stop buying the light novels, they stop buying the manga or the anime DVDs and Blu-rays. So I just like the idea of thinking in my head, I have so many ways and opinions on how a next arc could go down, and it kind of all feels really interesting, while also recognizing that I probably can't accurately predict where it wants to go until I see it, because there's actually quite a few moments throughout this first season that really I couldn't predict, even understanding the formula that it was going for, which is an incredibly fun feeling. Cautious Hero just has a production that just radiates silly and every time I saw those funny faces, I was just rolling on the floor. And when they had to go more serious and bloody, they did a really good job at making it not feel goofy or like the production was, missing its target, but, it's supposed to make you feel, oh shit, someone is actually getting hurt. And then when they weren't in those moments, I was just laughing at the absurdity. It just feels like Hsieh, it was so good. It was just a ridiculous show that, like, whether you hate isekai and were surprised by, like, oh shit, this is actually pretty good, or you literally watch every isekai that's ever made, it kind of hit everyone's notes where you could just walk in and out of an episode saying, weird, people who usually don't discuss the same anime because they hate isekai or they love isekai, we're all just kind of watching the cautious hero being like, god damn, we all like the same show, which rarely happens. Isekai haters and isekai lovers together is kind of an impossible task that only a couple anime every 5 years gets right, but goddamn did Cautious Hero do it gracefully, and just, it was a good anime. It's disappointing that it's over, but at the same time, all good things must come to an end, and should we get more anime, who's gonna really be complaining at this point in time, am I right? Great anime, great finale. I'll be interested to see if it does get a season 2 or not, but whatever happens, it's good right here. Like, it's a great ending, but it obviously can do so much more. But what did everyone think, either for anime originals, fans of the source material? How did you enjoy episode 12 of The Cautious Hero? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and remember to leave a like if you did enjoy, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.